Welcome to Super Agents Live. This is the one place where you can come and hear the most successful people in real estate. You'll hear how these super agents built their businesses, how they stay productive, and how they stay motivated. Who am I? My name's Toby Salgado, and I made my first $1 million in real estate. And I'm your host for the next 30 minutes while we talk to yet another amazing real estate entrepreneur. Stay tuned.
Let's go! Yeah!
On today's show, we have Gary Gold. Gary is a marquee name in the Los Angeles luxury real estate market. And he is one of the most successful technology marketers. He's the number one marketer on Zillow in Beverly Hills and Hollywood Hills. And Gary has a rare ability to secure high net worth, qualified buyers from internet leads. So I'm excited to hear about that. He's been on shows like Access Hollywood, CBS, Wall Street Journal, a ton of shows. I'm not going to even go through them. Hey, Gary, thanks for taking the time out today.
Thanks a lot.
So I've given a brief, you have definitely a rich and varied background, but maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Yeah, I started in 1977. I tried to paint my 240Z by myself. I thought you could just go and,
with a paintbrush?
And sand. No, I tried to sand. I got my dad's drill, and I got a sander on top of it, and it rotated around.
Yeah.
And I literally put holes in my entire car.
Oh my God.
I'm like 16 years old, and I now have no car. And my older brother, who was really successful in real estate, said, "Gary, come work for me. I'll buy you a car."
Awesome.
So that's how I got into real estate. So I started at the time at 16. I was just I did this marketing, and I never wanted to be in real estate. I always wanted to be like a songwriter or a comedian or something like that. So my brother was this really young guy, and he just let me do anything I wanted. And I came up with some of the wildest marketing you've ever seen. And I really think it was some of the beginnings of personal branding. My brother ran around, to his credit, in tennis shorts. And everyone else was like 1,000 years old in real estate in 1976 and 1977. And he's this young, good-looking guy running around in a Corvette and tennis shorts. And everyone knew him as the guy in the Corvette and tennis shorts, as absurd as that was. But we started doing some really wild marketing. I remember once when Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan were both running for president, and I did this series of postcards. I remember I did one in front of it where there was Ronald Reagan was saying, was in front of the White House in a caricature with my brother, and we said, Ronnie saying to my brother, "I'm looking for a 4-year lease with an option for another 4." And another one that I don't even know what this means at the time. At the time, I had no idea what it means. But I had one with Jimmy Carter, my brother, and Jimmy's going in front of the White House, and Jimmy's going, "I like the House. It's the Senate I can't stand."
Wow.
So we did crazy marketing like that, and it was super, super successful. We had this little office where it was me and my brother and an assistant, and people thought we were as big as these companies that had hundreds of people working for them.
That kind of stuff would work today. Yeah, that's a great story. I mean, that is very Gary Vaynerchuk. I mean, if you did that today in 2014, you would get a high five from a Gary V for sure.
Oh, yeah. And at the time, real estate was so unsophisticated. First of all, a purchase contract, like a listing agreement, was 1 page. A purchase agreement was 2 pages. All you needed to get into real estate was like a business card, a license, and no better options. It was a really low-brow kind of business. But what there were some really people that knew how to hustle and people that knew each other. At this time, there were no photographs. If you did a brochure, I remember we started doing brochures on expensive homes. It would take like 6 weeks to get the brochure. But there was no MLS. The MLS we used to go pick up, and it was like 8.5 by 11 sheets.
Oh, wow.
And we'd go to the MLS and pick them up. So there was no photography. Where people really looked at houses was in the LA Times.
Right.
Or the newspaper. And it was classified at the time. It wasn't even display. Display was the next incarnation. So open house sign or a for sale sign was the number one way to get clientele. And then the newspaper was number 2.
Interesting. Well, let's get into. I mean, that's a great story. Let's get into you. You are a tech guy, and you know, number one Zillow marketer, and you have some ideas about the industry as a whole. Because you know, for me, Gary, you know, I personally still think that the industry is unsophisticated. I mean, I don't think it's changed. To me, it hasn't changed a huge amount since 76 or 77. You know, what are your thoughts on the industry as a whole and where we're going?
Oh, so in your opinion, you don't think it's changed that much?
Well, no, we have DocuSign now. I mean, so we can do some things online. You know, you certainly, you know, we have an MLS, and you know, consumers are able to look to find properties in a different way, but it's still search, right? You could search on the LA Times.
No. Well, let me tell you the differences. Okay. There are some fundamentals. Like, for instance, there's a few people in my office. There's one lady in my office she's the opposite of anything you'd think was successful. She started really late in her career. I mean, like, she was in her 60s.
Wow.
I don't know if she knows how to use her iPhone. I don't even know if she might have a flip phone. She doesn't know how to do a contact.
She has a rotary dial phone in her purse.
And let me tell you something. She kicks butt. So there's people who don't know anything, and they're just great with people, and they do well. I don't know if that person 5 years from now is still going to be able to do business if they don't adjust. But right now, there's still people that do things very, very, very simply that can still do well. However, in general, the industry has changed, and it has changed a lot. Like, for instance, when I used to show people houses in the 70s and the 80s, I might show somebody, and I kid you not, I could show them 100 houses, because the only way for them to see a house was to physically go there and look at the house.
Right.
And then if they wanted, they'd come back and see it again and again and again, and it was very, very, you know, it was very inefficient. Right now, the way people look for homes is they look online. And they look at pictures, and they look at a little bit of the copy, but it's primarily pictures. And by the time they actually see a house, it's already on the short list. They've already vetted the area, the schools, the neighborhood, the pictures, the condition. There's so many things they've already figured out. It's really a second or third showing by the time they actually look at a house.
Right.
And I work the luxury market, so I have really high-end clientele. And another thing that's changed a lot is when I used to deal with celebrities or people who were very busy, I would always deal with attorneys, business managers, assistants, wives, husbands, whatever, but not usually them. And then at the very end, they'd show up and look at things. Now, the search process going online, whether it's on their iPad, on their jet, or their computer at home, or their iPhone, that search process, the actual principles, even if you're Warren Buffett or you're anybody, you're Paul McCartney is going to be on Zillow or Trulia or a realtor looking for homes, because that process, that engagement process of searching, everyone loves to do. And that is the process of looking at homes. And that has changed a lot. I cannot tell you how many people online from various different sources, whether it's one of my videos or from Zillow or Trulia or Realtor or my website, where I get like famous people, emailing me at 11 o'clock at night or texting me at like midnight or 9, it's fascinating. Another thing that's changed is it's become worldwide. When I started selling houses I got my license in 80, I'd say 5% of my clients had an accent. Now 80% of my clients have an accent.
Wow.
And now it's a lot of these people are now U.S. citizens and they're Americans, but 80% of the people I deal with were born in another country.
See, so what that points to me, right? So you said that, when people search for their house, and by the time that they actually see it, it's already the third showing, right? Because they've seen pictures, they vet it online. And I think in a lot of ways, what I'm hearing from you, Gary, is that they vet the house online, but they also vet realtors online before you get a call.
100%. And the one thing that I've done, and are we talking primarily to real estate agents right now?
Primarily, yes.
Okay. The one thing that I've done, which is a real game changer, is I love video.
Yeah.
And I've been doing video. I really didn't even realize this, but the first video I did was like 1996, I was doing video.
Early.
Yeah, it was VCR, but we were doing video. I'm serious. We would do a VCR, and we would mail it to somebody. You know, if an expensive home, you can mail it to someone in New York, and they thought it was the greatest thing they've ever seen. It was like mind-boggling, and that was like the beginning. But I do 3 different types of videos. I do instructional videos where I'll like do a video on how to get a great buy in a seller's market, how to win multiple offers. I've done videos for foreign buyers, frequently asked questions, because a lot of foreign buyers, especially from Asia, they don't know so many things that we take for granted. And so I do these videos. And what happens with videos like the instructional ones, or if I do a video of a home and I'm taking a tour, especially the instructional ones, it's almost like they get to meet me.
Right.
Without having to expose themselves. So they're sitting there drinking a glass of wine in their sweats at 9 o'clock at night, and they're on their iPad or they're on their computer, and they're searching around the internet, and they come across this video, and it's got an appealing topic, and they do this, and they hear me, and either God, this guy sounds like he's sharp, and I like him, and I remember. And this is a real advantage opposed to someone with some canned photo in the corner of their website, you know, holding the phone to their ear. And that person's just literally, there's no personality there. There's no nothing. You don't know anything about them other than they're really mediocre at marketing. Right. And so I remember I had some people come in from China. And when they came and met me, they hugged me.
Oh my gosh.
And they were so happy that they had met somebody that they felt that they trusted. You know, everyone on the line right now listening to this, imagine yourself that for some reason you have some job opportunity transfer and you're moving to China tomorrow. And you have to go there and buy a house, and you know nothing, which I don't. I know nothing about what's involved in buying a house, and what's the process, and who to trust, and what's a good deal. Can you imagine how much apprehension you'd have, and how many questions you have, and I mean the neurosis that would create?
It'd be scary.
Well.
I mean, it's like you've heard that term. You just got shanghaied, right? If you're going to buy something in Shanghai, you're worried about getting shanghaied. So,
right, exactly. So when they come here, but especially, you know, Asia is such a different place than here. Europe, there's a lot of similarities, and people are a little bit more familiar with each other. But when they're coming from another country and don't have these answers, and they don't have any inherent reason to necessarily trust what you're saying or even understand what you're saying. I remember I sold a $6 million home last year to somebody from Hong Kong, very sophisticated people. And Hong Kong is a fairly Western place. They didn't understand that you need to get or you should get insurance for your property, like fire, earthquake, whatever. It wasn't something they ever did. They weren't getting a loan, so no one was going to tell them to do it. And if it wasn't the fact that I told them that, they wouldn't have even known that.
Unbelievable. You know, one thing that, and I've watched your videos, Gary, and you've done a really great job with the breadth of how you do your videos. And one thing, why videos work, and this is for the audience, I'm sure you know this, is, you know, YouTube is owned by Google, and Google they search. But YouTube is the second biggest search engine next to Google.
Right.
So when you have your videos online, you know, the engines index those actually more highly than text content. So for you, Gary, how did you get into this high net worth category? I mean, certainly videos didn't get you there. No, it didn't. The first house I ever sold in like 1980 was $700,000, and the second one was $800,000. And in 1980, that was a big house. These were estates. So from the get-go, you know, I started in another area in the San Fernando Valley and Encino and Tarzana. So it was just, you know, I happened to be in the right place. But then when I turned, that was Encino, Sherman Oaks. It's fairly high end. But what happened when I turned 30 years old,
I just said to myself, if I'm going to be in real estate, if I'm going to be a bear, I want to be a grizzly. And I went and I moved over to Beverly Hills, and I interviewed a bunch of people, and everyone questioned that I could make the transition. And I was really successful, but there was one guy, Jeff Hyland, who I continue to work for, just said, "You're going to be a rock star." And I had done a deal with him, and he saw what I could do in the past. So, and he had been trying to get me to come over forever. So I moved to Beverly Hills, and that's how I got going. And you know, and it literally was one transaction that, I mean, I'd already been successful, but one transaction that put me into the high end forever. And I went to the Palm restaurant one night, and I ran into an old client, and and I hadn't seen him in a while, and he said, "Gary, I want you to meet a client of mine." He was a manager, and he goes, "We need an apartment for $2,000 a month. Can you help us out?" And I just moved to the West Side. I hadn't gotten that much going yet, and Beverly Hills, and I said, "Sure." And so it was a question of saying yes. So I went in and started sending them property and trying to find this girl who's she was a new singer, a place for $2,000 a month. By the time we got around to getting her a place, she had now had a little bit of success, and she bought a place for $750. And by the time we closed escrow, she was one of the biggest stars on the planet.
Wow.
And she immediately turned around and bought something for $3 million. And at the time, there was all this construction going on of new homes. And I took her around and showed her all these new homes to developers. And it was Paula Abdul.
Oh,
and
wow.
You show up with Paula Abdul in 1986. I think it was 1980. Was it 86?
86.
In like the late in the 80s, like it was 89 or 90. You show up in 1990 with Paula Abdul to some guy who's building a house up in the hills, and he thinks you're a star. And I got all these big listings as a result of that. Sold her a house, but just that was my entree, and then it went from there.
Ambition meets opportunity. And you just took the jump. I mean, for us, so I'm in San Diego, right? So we have two very, very high end places. Well, we have three, but we have La Jolla.
Right.
And then we have like way more expensive than that. We have Rancho Santa Fe.
Yeah.
So, obviously, our audience are aspiring agents, and they want to get your kind of success, Gary. I mean, should they just go and jump in, and try to build a farm in an area like that, or
no? You know what? Let me tell you something. Well, to just be completely transparent, and who knows how things would have unfolded if I would have stayed in Encino, which I mean, we're in our office. Our average sale is about $3.5 million.
Nice.
On average, $3.5-4 million bucks. That's average. If you go to Encino, I would say the average, and where I started, the average sale is going to be more like, even if you're on the high end, maybe $1.5 million, $1.7 million, $1.8 million. But as you sell smaller homes, you sell more of them, and the requirements are less, and you can build a bigger team around it, and it's a little bit less high touch. I mean, there's a lot more. As the price gets higher, I think the finesse gets higher. And some of the most successful agents around are selling homes that are not $4 million. That's just one angle. I would say if I was starting out, the most important thing for someone is find some niches where you really are great at something, where you really know something. You bring it to the table. The fact that you have a real estate license and you have some website that looks slick doesn't really having a license does not provide any value to anyone. However, if you really knew beach houses and you knew everything about them, or you really knew vacant land, where there was a lot of vacant land in your area, and you knew everything about what's required to build it and what you can do where and what the value is. If you knew the condo market like crazy, and someone called you up and you were like this encyclopedia of condos in a certain area, and you really were the guy, or historic properties, whatever it is, then you actually have value. The one thing that has really changed in our industry is that, because you said you didn't think it changed that much. Well, let me tell you what some of the things where I think they have changed a lot. When I started, what we controlled is we controlled the inventory. If you needed to find a house, you had to do it through a real estate agent. That's how you'd find out information.
Right.
And we also controlled the distribution. We'd have a sign up, or we'd be in our real estate ad. Now, buyers or sellers do not need us to establish value or to see what's available. They don't need us. It's all out there. I mean, I would say the average buyer focused on a specific home. If he's all over the place, it's a different story. But if he wants $1 million home in this square mile, he probably knows that within a month or so, as well as any agent. He's really, because he's focused on this one narrow thing. I'd say he probably knows what he wants as well as any agent. What an agent can bring to the table is the inside baseball. It's that real local expertise. The fact that he knows that the home that he thinks sold for $1 million actually was such a horrible floor plan, or the house was completely tricked out, and the brokers have years of history, and they know what the story is, or they know the circumstances, and they really bring expertise to the table. And they also can be a lot of value through the process, through the inspection process, through the loan process, and also taking a lot of the indigestion out of the complexity of the deal. But the raw information, everyone's got that now. So if all you bring to the table is, hi, I've got a license and I have access to the MLS, you're not bringing anything to the table. You better be really cute.
Yeah, I agree. So let's go down this. And this interview is turning out a little bit different than my normal one, but that's fine. So I'm an aspiring agent. I need to go find a niche. So I find a niche, and let's say that it's beach houses, right? Because we're in San Diego. Let's just say that. What should I do? What should I do next? Should I start doing videos about really cool ones, or what is my next step in building out that niche and making myself an authority for that niche?
It helps to be creative, but it's funny. Because I debate this internally myself. I would say that consistency of something mediocre would probably be better than genius things that happen every once in a while. But let's just say you want to be the you want to be the guy who knows all the condos
downtown.
In that downtown, and you want to do that. Well, I think the idea of starting to do some videos could be good. And, one of the most popular videos to do is a market update. But, if you did it in a little bit different way, it could be really cool. One thing I'm thinking about doing right now is, hey, listen, here's downtown San Diego condos. Here is how much inventory is on the market.
Interesting.
And saying, now, if there's 6 months of inventory on the market, historically, that means prices are neither going up or down. But let's just say, right now, we have 3 months of inventory on the market. That is a guarantee that prices are going to be going up. So it's, okay, there's inventory, prices are in an upward trajectory. Or we have 9 months of inventory on the market, and that all indications lead that it's going to go down. But you might want to say, if you really look closer, that 9 months of inventory is kind of misleading because 20 properties just came on the market yesterday because there's a new development. So you might want to make that quick adjustment. Whatever you do it quickly. Don't really go off on tangents.
Yeah.
So I would first tell people, here is where the market is right now, this week, and this is why, because of that. And most people don't understand that, but it really is a fail-safe. You could have a war-torn area. You could be in the middle of this war-torn area, and if there's 3 months of inventory, prices are going to sell high. I remember when Russia was going through this crazy turmoil, when things really changed there towards democracy, and Moscow was the most expensive office market in the world. Not because it was stable and things were great; it's because there wasn't any available. So I think I would start out with that and do a quick 30-second boom, and then I go, here is what I think is the best deal in San Diego right now. Or here are my two best deals right now down in San Diego. They don't have to be your listings. I love this one and I love that one. And then here is the coolest house and coolest condo down in San Diego right now. Boom.
That's great.
That in itself could be really good information.
Yeah.
Here's the marketplace up and down. Here's two houses that I think are great deals. And here's one that I'm not saying it's a great deal or not, but it is cool. And here's and that tells a lot. And that's good information.
And you know, the thing is,
that's just one idea.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that is great actionable advice. I'm confident that somebody is going to go out and do that and they're going to be successful. So let's say that I do that, Gary. I'm sure there's somebody else out there right now who is the king of downtown condos. Should I go out and try to meet that person? And are they going to be open to me playing in their turf, or are we going to have a battle? And how do you deal with that?
This isn't West Side Story.
Sorry, man. I didn't get that much sleep, as I told you earlier. So no, but really,
that's it. Yeah. So the reality here, and what's so interesting about real estate is let's say you're in an office with 100 people.
Yeah.
And you're on the pecking order, you're number 94, and you've been there a year. And then there's people, the top 10. Things change really quickly. In my office, which is insane, we do $2 billion a year with 100 people.
Oh, I know. You guys.
There is people in the top 5 that haven't been doing this that long.
You have some young kids.
Anything can change like that. We have a girl that just has been here a couple of years, top 10.
Boom.
My former assistant is one of our top 10 agents. She was my assistant 10 years ago. But there's people who've been in the business less than 10 years that are some of the biggest agents in the country. So I wish it had to do with tenure and how long you've been in the business, because I've been in it over 30 years, even though I'm pretty young. I started so young. But it's not. It's we are athletes. I say the best comparison to us are athletes.
Huh.
And as good as we are, as much skill as we have, it still boils down to performance. And we have hot streaks, we have cold streaks. Peyton Manning, some people argue, might be one of the best quarterbacks of all time. It didn't do him much good last Sunday. He did not execute. All the skills he had, it didn't come together for him. And agents are the same way. You need to, whatever your business is, you need to execute today. It's not, we don't build up this annuity that helps us. I guarantee almost any real estate agent, as successful as they are, take them off the grid for 3 months and their business is history. Like they never existed.
Oh my God. So for your assistant, right? So she was your assistant. I'm sure you were a great teacher, and that's why she is, top 10 now. But
I was a good teacher. She was a horrible assistant. She's a good friend of mine.
But what is the difference? I mean, so you have a mediocre guy, right? You have the number 94 out of 100, and then you have the top 10 that has done it, in 5 or 7 years. It is execution, but there's something else. What is that other thing that separates mediocre from greatness?
A couple of things. Number one, they've made really good decisions. Because we sit there, we all make decisions. I'm making a decision right now to spend an hour and talk to people who are potentially my competition and give them my pearls of wisdom. And to tell you the truth, I've made a decision to actually educate my competition and give away some information. And in the big picture, it feels right. Karmically, it feels good. I like doing it. Every time I teach, I tend to learn. And I believe I will get business back as a result of that. So that is a decision. Whether that is a good one or not a good one, time will tell. But I put some effort. That's a decision. There's a guy in my office decided to be on some TV show. It ended up being a really good idea. There's other guys that decided to be on the same TV show. Not such a good idea for whatever reason. Huh. And it was just decisions they made. So the one thing that's very important is so many real estate agents are completely rudderless, and they just don't have a strategy. They don't have a game plan. They have no way to measure if they're heading in the right direction or the wrong direction. And I know this so well because I've been that guy before, where If your only answer, how's business, and you're going, I'm working my ass off, hope it's a good year, you're in trouble. You should know, this is what I'm doing, these are the results. If I don't get those results, I'm going to make adjustments, and you should be able to measure what you're doing. Is it giving you results? If you can't do that, you're screwed, because you're just going to be this rudderless person running around throwing crap against the wall. So you really need a strategy. Even if you have a bad strategy, if you come up with this idea, you're new, by the way, you could be new or need to reinvent yourself. It's the same thing. Let's say you've been in it like me for 30 years and you're just in the dumps and it's just things aren't right. You need to just change and reinvigorate and build up again. That's the same deal. But just to sit there and work hard, there are a few people that can just do that and it works. They're just these ultra hustlers and it just works. But for most of us, you should really be able to know what you're doing and have a way of measuring if it's working. And if it's not working, make changes.
Right.
That changed my business for sure. I now know what's up. And there's leading indicators and lagging indicators. I can tell you that based on what I have done, what the results are going to be, it's really obvious. I mean, sometimes I've created my own CRM that I can look and I can tell you what's going to be happening in the next 3 months based on what I've done in the last 3 months. I can also sometimes think I'm so busy, and if I look back, I've made 3 phone calls this week to new people. Because we can so kid ourselves. It's so easy to be busy today,
right?
And spin your wheels. So you really need to be able to measure how many calls you're making, how many appointments you're making. I mean, how many listing appointments you're going on, how many buyers are you taking out? Are you doing these things? I mean, how many listings do you have?
Right. So have that strategy, right? So know where you're going, know where you're get that rudder, know the point on the shore that you're heading towards. And then as you go along, track everything. And if you can track it, right, and you can measure it, that's where for yourself, you get those leading and lagging indicators, right? So if hey, yeah, I made 10 phone calls, 20, whatever, how many phone calls that you did today, at the end of the month, how many deals that is going to yield. And for you also know, right, how much money that equals, right? Because that your average sale is $4 million or whatever.
Right. And the beauty of the way I do it is, let's say I have these premises and I make X amount of calls, I'm going to do this amount of deals. If that doesn't happen, I make adjustments, because you know what? My success rate and also the market itself changes. There could be a marketplace, market's super hot, and you are super hot, you might need to make 3 or 4 calls. You're going to get someone who's really legit, and for every 5 unique calls you make, you're going to do a deal. That could happen. That's a little low, but it could happen. You could have a dead market, and it could take you 200 calls, really making 200 contacts, right, with anyone before you do a deal. And then there's everything in between. And I work with Tom Ferry, is my coach.
Oh, and Tom, hold on. Tom was on the show yesterday. I interviewed Tom yesterday.
Yeah, he's awesome. So Tom has literally, I think he's the biggest real estate coach in the country. They measure everything there. And they take all the people that they work with all over the country, and a lot of people think we're unique, but we really aren't when we boil it down. And it'll be funny. A few years ago, it took an average of 80 calls to make a deal. And now we've gotten better, and strategies have gotten better, and the market has gotten better, and that diminishes and gets lower. So, measuring what you're doing is big. And that's one of the big changes to our business as well. Our business was not, they weren't a bunch of sophisticated people that were running offices. We were like guys in an office picking up the call, hustling. That was what real estate was. It was that simple. There was nothing more to it. And now, to be successful, what do you need to know? You need to be literally an expert on finance. You need to be an expert on your contracts. It's not that difficult, but there's those contracts. You better know them. You need to go and be able to advise someone when they inspect a property and all the different things that go along with inspecting a property. That's a big responsibility, and you need to know how to do that right. You need to be a psychologist. All of a sudden, now you need to be tech savvy to be a real estate agent. And you need to have marketing chops. You need to understand that. So all those things need to be accomplished. Now, either you need somebody where you hire them out to get that job done, but you still need to, be involved, or you have someone on your team or in your office to get that done. But you can't avoid getting that done for now and as the future is going. So, yeah, that's changed a lot. We didn't have to do any of that stuff back then. We just needed to go and go to the Rotary Club, go to the country club. There used to be a guy in Beverly Hills that was super successful in his whole business plan. He'd go to the Friars Club and he'd play poker. And he'd play poker, he played gin, and he got all his business from playing cards all day. And he made a lot of money.
I'll tell you what, I interviewed a guy that's in your market, and unfortunately he's got a generic name, so it's not coming. I can't remember right now. But this guy plays golf at some upscale golf private place. He plays golf every day. He's a scratch golfer, and that's all he does, and he gets all his leads. He's got this dream story, and he's from Canada. I'm like, dude, you're living the American dream. But let me back up for a second, because
okay.
I love, get your strategy and track everything. Now, that was making sense to me. And I was like, for me and for my audience, I was like, okay, I can do that. And then you threw the curveball, right? So now I have to be an expert on finance. I have to be an expert on contracts, inspections. I need to be tech savvy. There's all this other laundry list of things I need to do to be successful. Mm-hmm. How do I prioritize that? Because I want you to talk to this. If I'm in an upscale average $4 million property, if I'm in that kind of office versus I'm in $300,000 to $500,000 average sale, how is my strategy going to fundamentally be completely different, or is it going to be, or are they the same type of strategy? Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, there is. It's kind of the same, but there is some difference. The biggest difference is I notice, like when I listen to Tom, or I'm going into a conference where there's, Tom has this annual summit with 3,000 people, and when he's talking to everybody, I have to make some adjustments when he's talking about guys that are selling $300,000 homes, because they'll stand up and they go, "How many houses are you going to sell today?" And it's like, last year I sold 300. This year I want to sell 500, right. Or I sold 100. That requires a completely different model to sell 100, 200, 300, 400 houses. You've got this huge staff. It's a whole different logistical thing. Yeah. This year, I'm going to sell 36 houses. It's a different animal. I don't need the staff they have. I don't need the logistics they have. I can be way more high touch. It's a whole different animal. So those are, I would say there are some differences between offices. Okay. But some of the fundamentals are still the same.
I agree. So, and just briefly, because I don't want to waste all our time talking about this. And this is great stuff, by the way, but I want to talk about your office is Highland and Highland. And if you look
Hilton and Highland. Hilton and
Sorry, I apologize. Hilton and Highland. You guys have rock stars in that office. How important is it, the office that I choose? I mean, should I go out and try to get into a Hilton and Highland or my local Remax Century 21?
That really depends on the marketplace. Mm-hmm. First of all, every marketplace is different. For instance, if you went to a Keller Williams or Century 21 or Remax in Beverly Hills, you're doing yourself a huge disservice, that you are actually starting out with this huge deficit. So that's a bad idea. Now, you go to Remax in Manhattan Beach, which is a very expensive area, and they've got a presence there, and they're thought of differently there. So I would say that I've worked for myself. I've worked for primarily Jeff Highland, since I've been 30 most of the time, but I was also at a big office for a very short period of time. And you can make any of them work. You really can. But if you're going to work at an office, I would say that they should be bringing something to you. They should be bringing something to the table for you. They should provide something. My office, what it provides is that we've got the best agents there. We've got this great cachet. Literally, the name itself is a door opener. And we do a lot of deals with each other. We've just, someone gets a new listing and you're walking down the hallway, hey, what do you got? And deals happen that way. So in that, and it's just a really cool environment, and it's also super competitive. I mean, it's like you can think you're hot shit. I hope I can say that.
That's okay.
And you can think you're a big deal, and there's 10 other people in the office that have game that can, that are just as good.
Got it.
And that can up your game. So that's a good thing. But you can make it work. I mean, when I worked for myself, I made it work. That angle can work. So, you work. There are people that work at Coldwell Banker. I'm not necessarily suggesting it, but there's some super successful people that have taken that big corporate mentality and have made it completely work, and they completely take advantage of it, and it makes sense for them, and they're killing it. There's people who work at Hilton Highland. They're killing it. There's people who have their own office and do their own little thing, and it makes complete sense. So there's not one way to skin the cat. I think there's going to actually in the future be a lot of changes because, the way we run business is a little – I think we are going to have – we've had a lot of transformation in our business as we've been describing, and I think that there's going to be a lot more in the future. I see in the future one day there'll be real estate offices that are run like, I think this would be great, like a law office.
What do you mean?
What you mean is that you would have the law office would be owned primarily by these senior partners. They would start a company and there's 8 agents and they would own it. And then you'd come in starting at the bottom. And then you'd work your way up to junior partner to partner and start owning a piece of it. And literally the entire company worked together. And you could be someone who maybe you're a rainmaker, but you're not out there pounding the pavement all day, and you could make a lot of money doing what you do well. And people, because, real estate offices, right now the way real estate offices work, for the most part, we're all just independent people that market together and work together, but we really don't work together. I mean, our business are not dependent on each other. We're all independent. So I could see places where that happens. I could see, teams are definitely, I could see companies evolving that know how to accommodate teams and make way more sense than they do now.
Sort of an umbrella method rather than a siloed approach.
Exactly. I see that happening too.
So let's talk about productivity a little bit, because you definitely are in a unique market. You do unique thing. Your goal is 36 houses or properties. And what's the total volume on that for you? 60 million, 50 million?
It can vary. I mean, for that, it's going to be, that would be north of 100.
Got it.
We'll see. I mean,
well, you're going to do it for sure. So for you, how do you stay productive and focused on a day-to-day basis? I mean, you have this high touch market, and I'm sure that can get away from you. I mean, just going out and having coffee and lunch, and how do you stay productive and focused?
What I did, I've been using Top Producer since 1996, and it's been like a bad marriage.
Huh.
I mean, I'd love to get out, but I just can't afford it, and it's too complicated. So I actually, a couple years ago, I had something personal happen with my family where it was like one of the things you never, ever, ever want to happen, but happens. And I had this plan for this huge year in 2012, and then I was faced with this family thing that I needed to deal with. It was an illness in my family that I just had to be full on priority. And I went, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to do. I have this huge, and we're all faced with this sometimes. We're these independent contractors. There's not too many people that, if they took a year off, it would really work for them. And I asked myself, how do I get through this year? Because I said, I'm not going to do anyone any good by dismissing my business and letting that fall apart. That's not going to help my family.
Right.
I need to continue to be successful. I need to take care. I have 2 little kids. I need to take care of them. I need to take care of my wife, and I need to keep this all together and compartmentalize. And fortunately, I was coached because I was asking really good questions. I wasn't asking. I'm a Tony Robbins guy, and now I'm Tom, and I just asked myself good questions. And I remember the question was, how am I going to be able to think less and sell more this year? How can I take care of my family, my wife, and have the best year ever? And that was the question I had. And I was literally sitting in the hospital during a surgery and kind of waiting for this. And I came up with this idea. And I created a CRM that is really simple. And all it really focuses on is how many people you've called, and how many people you've met, and keeping track of that. Because I knew if I called enough people, I would get enough belly-to-belly meetings, and I would sell enough houses, and I needed a way to just be able to do that without thinking. Because I don't know about you, but I can think at night when everyone's gone to sleep. I'll figure out my day. I'll strategize. I might be able to do that in the morning, but once the clock goes and I'm ready to rock, I'm in action mode. It's not a time to start strategizing. I just can't. I'm just in it. So I created a system where I can just look all on one page, and it's who do I need to call, and who's a priority and why. And I've continued to make adjustments on that. So I really have front and foremost this system. And the one you asked a question earlier, and I'm going to answer it. You said, "How do you know?" You just dumped on me 8 different things that we need to do.
Yeah.
What do we do? I have this one system where I'm tracking right now 100 and I'll give you the exact number. I think it's 150. I have 142 leads of some sort, whether it's already listed or I'm trying to list or I'm trying to buy, want them to buy. Personal 142 people that I'm tracking in some way. One of the categories I have is called now. Who can I list, or who can I sell a home with? Who can I list their home, or who can buy a property, whether it's a currently listing I have or it's a buyer I'm working with, this week? And I always have that front and foremost. So if I'm sitting in my office and I get in there in the morning, first thing I might want to ask myself is, who's on that list? How many do I have? I can tell you right now, there is 6 people that could list their home with me this week. And there is 1, 2, and then there is 11 people I could get into escrow this week, one way or another, whether it's a listing that's I feel that is about to pop, or whether it's a buyer that if I took them out and showed them the right thing, they'd buy it. So that's one of the things that I look at, one of the indicators I look at.
Got it.
Okay. I also have different priorities, and I have another one. Who do I think is most likely, whether it's now or a year from now, most likely I'm going to make money from, I'm going to actually do a deal with? Because there might be somebody that I could do a deal with. I share my house now, but if I really think about it, the likelihood of that happening, because they might be working with 10 other people, is low. So I have a lot of different ways to measure that, and I look at it in different angles. But so the answer is, you should ask yourself, that's the number one question, what could I do that could actually create a listing or a sale this week?
Boom.
And you got to get through those and ask yourself that question every day. That would make a huge difference in anyone's business if they're not doing a similar thing.
I love it. Well, hey man, we're running over a little bit, so let's start to wrap this up a little bit. We're at the Ask the Agent round. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and there should be simple answers. We'll see, but again, our audience
make a multiple choice. Okay.
Our audience are aspiring super agents. I'm out there. I have $25. I want to buy a book. What book should I go buy right now?
I would get. There's 1 or 2.
You can give me 2.
Here's 2. I would say you just kick it way old school, and Think and Grow Rich is a great book.
I love it.
I read that every year when I was, for 15 years. I read that every year. And then the first book I ever read, I was 8 years old, and I walked into a bookstore and I went to the self-help section,
What?
which is very strange,
Yeah.
but I did it, and I don't know why. And I read this book called The Magic of Believing. And it is a good book. It's really simple, and it just talks about believing something and, materializing it. And off the top of my head, those are two books I would consider.
Well, I highly endorse the first one for sure, and I've never heard of the second one. And for our audience,
Tony Robbins is also just,
Awaken the Giant, for sure.
So great at
Yeah.
getting your act together. Tony's amazing.
Well, one of the things we're working on right now, we're working on a deal with Audible that should be wrapped up in a couple of weeks where when I get a book recommendation, our audience can go and they can get that book for free. So be on the lookout
cool.
for that. Let's talk about an internet tool briefly. I know that you're a tech savvy guy. Do you have an internet tool like an Evernote that you're absolutely in love with that you can share?
I have a lot of them that I can share that I like. One thing I used to do it on Box. I now do it on Google Drive. Google Drive's really cool. I keep all my documents, all of them, on Google Drive, so I can access it from my iPad, I can access it from my iPhone, and I can access it from my computer, and so can my assistant. And we can collaborate, and it's there. And that thing is that's like amazing.
And it's free.
And it's free. I spent a little money with Google to have better service, but it's free. But I'm in love with Google Drive right now. Really dig that.
All right. Do you have any personal habits you think that have contributed to your success, Gary?
Yeah, I suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder and attention deficit disorder. So I wouldn't suggest it, but I mean, yeah.
But
and I have a healthy dose of fear.
Interesting.
So those three things definitely drive me.
Hey, Gary, this has been an absolutely fantastic interview. I appreciate you taking the time out. And I know that if you track everything, you know that the time you spent with me and our audience, it probably cost you, $10,000. So I appreciate it. You've dropped golden nuggets of advice as well as a bunch of actionable stuff. And I love when that comes out. You've given us some actionable stuff that we can literally go today, right now, and implement in our businesses. So maybe tell us where we can find you, and we'll sign off.
Hey, my website is soulbygold.net, and you go check it out. I mean, if you want to see what I do and where people end up vetting me before they hire me, that's where they go. And that's what I've done. I unfortunately have lots of content, but that content, by the way, you go look at my website, it's filled with content. It started out by just collecting that content, kind of like measuring. I collected, I did a video and I put it somewhere, and it starts to accumulate. You got to start somewhere. But that started with nothing, and now look at what I have there, and it's awesome. I love it. Well, Gary, you're the man, and I want to lean on you to try to get some of the other superstars out at Hilton and Highland to come on the show, because I've sent some emails out and I'm not getting great response. So maybe you can help. And if anyone has people looking to buy or sell in West Los Angeles, I'm happy to pay a referral fee. Perfect. All right. Well, I'm working on my sign-off line, and it's this. It is, until next time, live accountably. Thanks a lot. All right. Thanks, bud.